there, PPE or personal protective equipment will be the topic of the day here at Warehouse and Operations as a Career. Marty and Joe will be visiting with you today. Who else better to talk about our PPEs with us than our safety man, right? We'll be sharing a few of our thoughts and opinions on the subject, and we'll probably end up sharing a thought or two on safety overall as well, don't you imagine, Joe?
Absolutely. We can get safety involved in every aspect.
Safety is one of those things that I don't think we'd ever run out of subjects on. I was actually asked through an email, why are PPE so important? You have any thoughts on that, Joe?
Well, primarily PPE is there to keep us safe. If you show up to some place, any place, and your employer has a requirement for you to wear PPE, it's because there's a known hazard there. In other words, danger. Put this on because something wrong could happen.
You're absolutely right. Safety is always a concern for us in the warehouse and transportation fields. We hear about it every day, either in a startup meeting or something during our shifts. Each year, accidents or incidents happen way too frequently, really. So many times they can be avoided and prevented. Anything from wet floors to fallen cases, and I guess really everything in between. We should be taking our own health and safety seriously. Our company does, and if we notice something that is dangerous or a deficiency in the process, we should certainly speak up and share our concerns. PPE includes items such as hard hats, eye protection, high visibility clothing. I got a buddy that calls it be-seen clothing, safety footwear, safety harnesses, and really a host of other things. Steel-toe boots, which I really prefer. Shoes, tennis shoes, plastic caps or composite caps. Was it you telling me something about a chainsaw boot, Joe?
That's right. I saw an advertisement not too long ago. If you look up chainsaw boot on YouTube, you'll see a big boot sitting on a log, and what they do is kind of put a chainsaw to it. The purpose behind that was to kind of show you the difference between the composite toes and the steel toes. This particular company made both the composite and the steel. So if you're actually out there and you're like logging and using a chainsaw, well, they show you why you should have some of their steel toes on. When they put the chainsaw to the composite cap, you can imagine how it went through it pretty much like butter. Is there a real need for composite caps? Sure there is. If you work at a warehouse or a general labor type position, or even something that could be specialized, but the weight load for your hands is relatively low, and you run the risk of, say, maybe a 10-pound box or item falling on your foot, well, then composite caps would be more than enough. Whereas some places you would absolutely need the steel toe because it'd be a different effect if you had a large steel object at 50 pounds hitting your toe as opposed to the composite cap.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I've even, some warehouses, the over-the-road drivers come in to unload their own trailers, and I've seen those clackers that they make them put on, like slip-on kind of things. Those are used, by a lot of places.
Another item that isn't too much in the know is metatarsal guards. Those are very much futuristic RoboCop-like type boots because they're made to save and protect the bones that are between your ankle and your toes. So pretty much the stuff that gives your foot the arch. And the reason for that is because you might be handling very heavy objects at a workbench, or might be moving them with a crane or a hoist, or whatever the case may be. The risk for your feet is that much higher.
Oh, yeah, we've all, had a pallet standing up and we were going to throw it on the floor or something. We've all hit that archway on our foot. That would come in real handy. Safety glasses, that's another pretty much staple. I wish in my forklift days I had always wore them. I worked with a guy that, he wore his all the time. More than on one occasion, I would get dust or something in my eye, having to pull over and really check it out. That's another one of those PPEs that are really for our protection, and we probably need to utilize a lot more. Safety vest, or that be-seen clothing, I think is one of the greatest and easiest things that we wear, and I'm really excited to see more and more warehouses utilizing them. They come in several, different classes, class 1, 2, and 3. Respirators, that's another thing I'm seeing some, when we're in grain warehouses or very dusty places or dealing with products that fly through the air. And a lot of those respirators, they've got to be form fitted, don't they?
Every respirator has to be form fitted. Also, I liked what you touched on here. You mentioned safety glasses. Okay, now safety glasses, let me educate our learners in case somebody doesn't know about safety glasses. What constitutes an actual pair of safety glasses? Have you ever heard of the group ANSI, ANSI?
I have, especially in the safety vest. That's where I hear it from.
Do you know what ANSI actually stands for?
I'm embarrassed to say I do not.
It's the American National Standards Institute, if I remember correctly. And what they do is set forth all the actual requirements for, say, a pair of safety glasses, or just how reflective your reflective vest needs to be. They're the guys that are out there with the rulers and the scientific ways of measuring just about everything to actually give vendors and people who are inventing things an actual number and a standard on which to go by. So your safety glasses all have to be rated Z87 for them to actually qualify as safety glasses. So if you go down to the corner gas station and they have the awesome deal for, 2 pairs of awesome glasses for $8, and they're the wraparound shades that'll protect you from the sides. Now, don't get me wrong, those might work very well if you're out mowing your lawn on a hot day, say assisted by Mr. Bud and Mr. Weiser. Now that would be perfectly fine, I would think. On the other hand, if you're in an industrial setting where you have things that might become projectiles in the air, that's not quite the same. The Z87 rating that's on there is to let you know that these things can take an impact from a flying object going X feet per second coming at your eyes. So there's a huge difference. Marty, I'm an OSHA outreach instructor and several other kinds of instructors. And one of the safety videos that I have are of some safety glasses getting shot right on the lens by nail guns. And actually one of them's like with a 22 long rifle rimfire round. And every time those things aren't stamped Z87, well, they always fail. So it's real important to make sure that we're actually wearing a pair of safety rated safety glasses when they're called for.
Wow, that's really interesting. I've got about 4 pair myself. I'm going to go check them out and make sure I've got the right kind. I was able to pull some real quick stats, and I thought we'd go through just a couple real quick. I pulled this from www.bls.gov, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Annual total of 4,836 fatal workplace injuries in 2015 was the highest since 5,214 fatal injuries in 2008. Real quick, all I could find was the latest information was from 2015. The overall rate of fatal work injury for workers in 2015 fell at 3.38 per 100,000 FTE, or full-time equivalent workers, which was actually lower than in 2014's rate of 3.43. Roadway incident fatalities were up 9% from 2014 totals, accounting for over 1/4 of the fatal occupational injuries in 2015. Fatal injuries in the private manufacturing industry rose slightly in 2015 to 353 from 349 in 2014. Though the increase in manufacturing was small, the 2015 fatal injury total for manufacturing was the highest for that industry sector since 2008. The rate remains statistically unchanged from 2014. One or two other ones just real quick. Wholesale trade declined 8% to 175 cases in 2015, a series low actually. The number of private transportation and warehousing fatalities was essentially unchanged from 2014, but fatal injuries in the private truck transportation industry rose by 9% to 546 in 2015, the highest total since 2007. And, anytime you're dealing with statistics, you always have to look at the underreported side of it as well, don't you think?
Absolutely. Underreporting is something that we just have to look at and consider. Typically, we want to make sure that we're not part of any report. and that we're always doing what we're supposed to do, have our PPE and be in compliance, and realize that whenever a requirement for PPE has been made, it's for a reason.
Very well put. Very well put. I had reached out asking our listeners, some of their ideals on things related to safety. And I had a couple of questions about GMPs, that GMPs sometimes can be a safety practice as well. And I looked into that a little bit. I've written several of these procedures, and I think we're absolutely right. Things like do not bring any glass or brittle containers into the warehouse area. Something like do not place any product on the floor unless instructed to do so. One person sent that in as a trip and fall hazard. Do not use dirty or damaged pallets. Report to facility manager that pallet shards, can cause an accident. And you're absolutely right, is even the cross-contamination. Here's a good one that was sent in. Any damages, spills, or moisture is to be reported immediately and cleaned up. And that's on almost every GMP. A couple of things that was brought up about safety or related to safety was SDS stations. Those are the big, thick books that we all need to know where they are at all times. And now there's services with big 800 numbers, things like that, that's posted at the facility for you to call, and they look them up. You seeing a lot of that, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. You brought up some very good points. GMPs, Marty, I got to tell you, I've heard some very strange GMPs before. And while they sound strange, let me tell you, the people that come up with them for a reason. Once again, I worked at a place. It was a food warehouse that services a large portion of the United States. And while I was there, one of the rules was you have to leave the freezer gear in the freezer on the hooks. While that sounded kind of strange, only the upper management who realized that once that frozen clothing left there would become kind of wet and moist, that it became like a mildew mold type hazard. So therefore, they just had the requirement, well, to prevent that, we'll just always leave it in here. So you have employees who are going in there like, why do they want me to wear these super frozen clothes? No one understood. So there was a method to that madness, so to speak. So while things sound strange, because you got to keep in mind, if you work in a warehouse that's, say, a lumber type environment or a building materials type environment, those GMPs are going to be considerably different than, say, a food warehouse with a freezer, a cooler, and a dry sections warehouse's GMPs, where eating out on the floor definitely makes a huge difference and an impact on their business and their customers, etc. Also, the SDS. I love that you mentioned the 800 numbers, because I've seen that in some of the facilities that I've visited, where you call a third party that the business owner contracts with. So, if you work for ABC Foods or whoever, they'll have these giant signs in place of the SDS books, and usually a phone pretty near with an 800 number that you can call. And, it's a third party that's, totally independent. They're not going to side with your employer or you or anything. They're totally neutral, and they'll give you the straight from the hip truth about whatever it is that you're calling to ask for. And you got to keep in mind, as technology advances and we feel older and older, these things are going to start taking off even more. I know of one place that uses like computer stations and computer terminals to look up the SDS info, where they're hooked into a huge database that I'm sure they pay oodle caboodles for. And it's one of those things. It's almost like a perk for the employees to have those kind of added features.
It is, and I really like that computer station. I've never worked anywhere where we had a lot of chemicals or a whole lot of concerns. I know I was always taught to read the book, and of course you realize you got to get to it quickly. Took me forever to learn, I believe the sections to go to was 4 and 8. So I just kind of trained myself. Okay, look here first. Having a number or someone knowledgeable and not quite in the panic that we probably are. I just think that would help a whole lot.
That's right. One of the little things that I always teach people are Section 4 and Section 8. Now, how do I remember what's Section 4 and what's Section 8? Well, first, you want to make sure what these things are for the most potent chemical that you could be around. So any place I've ever worked, One of the weird things that I tend to ask, because all new guys ask weird stuff. One of the weird things that I've always asked is, hey, where's the most dangerous stuff that we keep around? Yeah, the reason for that's because I want to make sure that I am very far away from it. So if we're unloading trucks and moving this product to storage in the warehouse, well, if you're a part of any of that chain of custody for that pallet or that product, you might want to find out, because if you get that stuff on you, then you have to go look. It's probably already too late. So that's why it's good to find out what it is you're actually dealing with so that you know how to prevent it. Now, section 4 and 8. Section 4 is the first aid part. Why is that important? Because if you get it on, you need to know just how much help you need. Section 8 is the PPE section. Why do I need to know what PPE it is? Well, because I need to know if I need to have a face shield on in case the stuff splashes in my face, or, can I touch the box? Is it in a box? Is it in a plastic bottle? Is that bottle leaking? What kind of gloves do I need? What kind of gloves are going to keep that stuff out? Now, how do I remember that? Well, 4 and 8. Since 4 is first in the line of counting, instead of 8, well, 4 is first 8.
I like that. That's exactly how I learned it as well. Another thing that was sent in was eye wash and shower stations. And I remember, I believe it was 55 feet or 10 seconds or something considered reasonably accessible to us, not a wall in between us or something, in the area that we're working or we might come into contact with something. Most places that I know, even if they just carry 1 or 2 chemicals, they have an eye wash and shower station.
Yeah, most places that have chemicals or a battery changing station for powered industrial trucks, forklifts, pallet jacks, et cetera, usually have one of those. And it's, I believe, an eye wash within 10 seconds or 50 feet from either one of those hazards is what it is.
And nowadays, they don't have to be real plumbed in and piped in and all that. I've seen several that you just hang on the wall. And of course, I'm sure they have to be kept up or something. But I think they're a great ideal to have around if you just even have a few chemicals. Another thing that was sent in, and this happens to be one of my pet peeves, is pallets or dead wood. Don't stack them too high. If you stack pallets 20 or 30 high and they're freestanding, one good bump and that whole stack's going to fall over. We really need to watch how high we stack pallets. Another individual sent in wet floor signs. And, I really like this one. And he stated, it's one of the main safety tools that he's aware of. Probably comes in handy on, the day-to-day practice. Another thing that was sent in, dock plates. Watch those things. They're slick. If we see a spill on it, be sure that we get it cleaned up. Our equipment's going to be rolling over it. That's a good one. Another one sent in was dock doors or trailer docks. Never jump out of a dock door. Drivers aren't looking for you. It's in an area where people shouldn't be. You can actually even get injured just jumping out of it. We need to be sure to use employee exits. And I think this was one of the better ones, that I've heard of in a while. We've got to really respect dock doors.
That's right, Marty. We can't go where pedestrians aren't to be expected and expect good results. Whenever we jump out of a dock, and we've all heard it before, don't jump out of dock doors. Well, primarily the reason for that is because of how long those trucks are. So they have to maneuver themselves into those doors. It's usually not just, hey, I'm just back right on up to this door. That's why it takes an experienced driver to be able to do those things. I like seeing the signs on the back of the trailers that say, if you can't see my mirrors, I can't see you. Well, now just imagine if you're jumping out of a dock door, where those mirrors are going to be, where they're going to be pointed, and where you're going to be.
Exactly. I think one of the best ones sent in this week were safety meetings. Safety meetings is definitely a safety tool. It's so important to utilize our safety meetings. Everyone's gathered together. It's a great time for us to get noticed. We can use some key words, share some knowledge that we've picked up, and maybe ask some more questions to learn more. The bottom line is PPEs are important. Let's get them. Let's wear them. It only makes sense. There's not an excuse really not to wear them. As we're learning, it's so important to continue to grow, continue to educate ourselves, use key words to get our boss's attention, share what we've read or learned, get noticed, get on his or her radar. We want that next promotion or next opportunity, and safety knowledge is one of the most notable concerns to our managers. If we're good at our job, being productive, and displaying a strong safety culture, instilling a safety culture in others, that next job is going to be ours. Joe, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us here at WAOC. You're coming back again now, right?
Absolutely. Anytime you'll have me, sir. I like sharing whatever it is that comes up on my mind when I hear about these great topics that keep, rearing their heads to keep us all safe.
I learn something every time that I visit with anybody, and especially our safety guy. And thanks to each of you for listening in with us. I hope you enjoyed the topics today and they present value for you in some way or another. Please email us your thoughts to host@warehouseandoperationsasacareer.com or join our Twitter and Facebook feeds at Warehouse and Ops. Tomorrow, let's all bring up a safety topic at the start of shift meeting, and let's let our bosses know that we care.